Today on She Is, I sit down with BistraMilovansky, an immigration lawyer turned Yogini, to talk about how she found and followed her passion while being an immigrant single parent with a very demanding career.
As the first generation immigrants, that's our destiny, and
Yes.
we should be just aware of that and grateful and blissful about it, because the universe sends you only what you can handle.
BistraMilovansky is a New York City-based immigration lawyer for people in the arts, Kundalini yoga teacher, musician, and promoter of meditation and the healing power of sound, music, and chanting. She is a practicing Tibetan Buddhist surfer and ocean activist. Hi everyone, welcome to the show. You're watching She Is on Woman to Woman TV, and I'm Lucia Dragos. I have a very special guest with me, BistraMilovansky. Bistra, hi, thank you so much for joining me.
Such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to see you again, actually, because I met you 12 years ago.
Yeah.
You're an immigration lawyer, and now I found out that you're a yoga teacher.
Yes.
How that happened? But first of all, you're an immigrant and you're from Bulgaria,
Yes.
just as I am.
Yes.
How did you come from Bulgaria, and how many years ago?
It was a long journey. It started in 1990 when I first immigrated to Canada, and then I lived in Canada for 7 years. I studied there, communication studies, Ontario College of Arts and Design, and came to New York City as an exchange student at Pratt Institute, where I worked for 1 year. I studied for 1 year at the film and video multimedia department. I took this exchange program from Ontario College of Art and Design and graduated from the Ontario College of Art and Design in New York City. So after that, I was allowed to have a 1 year optional practical training in the area of study, which is a work permit that allows you to really continue developing your skill that you acquired in school. So during that period of time, incidentally, I was able to land a job at the Time Warner Cable in on Staten Island, where I worked as a producer of commercials. And yes, yes, exactly. We were talking about that in the break. So it was a big journey, because who was I at that moment? I was somebody coming from Bulgaria who single parent, immigrated with my daughter, studied, and then all of a sudden I get this job. I didn't know where to look. I had no idea. I had no connections. I didn't know much. All the people I knew were all immigrants, and they were all in my situation. Everybody was a beginner and starting and integrating themselves into the new culture and all that. And the only thing I knew was New York Times. So I opened the New York Times, and the first thing I saw was we're looking for a commercial producer for Time Warner Cable, who is to know how to edit commercials on Media Composer, Avid System. So I knew that from Canada, because I had worked as an Avid editor up in Canada. So I thought, well, that's me. But then when I went and I interviewed for the job, it was just so overwhelming to understand that I need to write the commercials, direct the commercials, produce the commercials, come up with a voiceover, hire the voiceover, direct the voiceover, and do all of that for the amount of $1,200. That was the budget of those commercials. Wow. And it was really, really very steep learning curve, I should say. But the most difficult aspect of it was that I was the only non-American working at Time Warner Cable on Staten Island.
That's a great achievement.
I
can relate to that.
there was not even one foreigner. I was like completely thrown out of my zone of comfort if I ever had one.
But you see, when you say as an immigrant, I remember when I came, the first place that I looked was The Voice, the newspaper.
Yes.
But then also, I didn't have any network, any support system around me, anyone that I knew. So I said, where should I go? School.
Yeah.
So I went to a theater school.
Yeah.
So for me, that was as an immigrant. But how happened that you went to study immigrant law?
After 1 year of work at Time Warner Cable, I was also, at that time, I was also working as a correspondent of Radio Free Europe. Since my background was, in Bulgaria, I worked for the radio and television, so it was a very natural transition for me. So I worked for them for 3 years, and as I had worked for them, my uniqueness as a journalist, as a writer, was very, very obvious to me and to a lot of people. So the opportunity I saw as a lawyer, because my background is law, pretty much. I graduated from the University of Kliment Ohridsky in Bulgaria as a master's degree in law. But when I came to America, I couldn't practice because it wasn't recognized in Canada, and I didn't want to. I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to do all these other things that I've been doing in Bulgaria as a radio journalist and TV journalist as well. So I forgot a little bit about it. But when I came to New York City, all of a sudden I saw this city of enormous opportunity, enormous energy that is just so welcoming and it's just so uplifting. All these immigrants come here. We all are immigrants, come here, and each one of us brings that energy of dream, of creation, of fulfillment, of making the best of you, unfolding your potential and seeing who you are, understanding self-realization, self-realizing, who am I? So I thought I should just go back to law school and see how I can, get my studies in Bulgaria counted towards something. And it wasn't that much, but they counted all 5 years for just one. So,
Wow.
so I had to do the rest of it. And I studied again in New York Law School for something like a LLM master degree program for, it's called Foreign Lawyers Program, where you get to step on the credits that were recognized from your country and then study some more and become a lawyer.
And you were a single parent at the time?
I was a single parent. Well,
amazing.
See, I should not
Incredible.
I should not mention it because you know very well that you don't have a life, basically. That's how it is.
Yes.
It's just not life.
I'm a single parent, I can relate to that, and I got my bachelor while
there is no,
my son was very small.
There is no question about it, that your life entirely gets on hold and puts on hold so that you can push everybody. As the first generation immigrants, that's our destiny, and
Yes.
we should be just aware of that and grateful and blissful about it, because you know the universe sends you only what you can handle.
Right. Now, how you went from immigration law to yoga?
Yoga. Well, I've passed the bar exam in America to practice, to become a licensed attorney in 2005. And since 2005, preparing for that time, I had worked for every thinkable scenario of a law firm, immigration law firm, because I used the time while I was studied to work as a paralegal, as a foreign lawyer for different immigration law firms, so that I can learn the tricks of the trade. And then once I get the license, I can open my own business, because I wasn't fresh out of nowhere. I was pretty much, you know, at that time I was in my 30s and I had a grown-up child. My daughter was in high school. So my path, it was very clear to me that my path will be my own path, ain't gonna be like anything else. So with that knowledge and understanding, I just set a strategy of how to put myself out as soon as I get the license to practice law in America. And once I got licensed, I immediately opened my own practice with capital of $5,000. That was
Great, wow.
And when I'm saying capital of $5,000, that would include my own living expense and my daughter's expense at that time. So I had $5,000 period. And with that, I had to start my own practice. And the way I did it was I would still work for somebody else part-time so that I can have a little bit of
Smoother transition.
smoother transition, and it always be like that. Each time I would transition from one place to another, I would keep a part-time or some kind of a contractual, yes, so that I can have some kind of income and not be completely out there. Because if it was for me only, I would probably do it the gypsy way. I would just go and
quit
do it.
and start, right?
But when you have a child,
Yes.
it's a different world.
Completely different. You have to think about
Yeah,
that
yeah.
all the time, especially as a single parent.
Yeah. But you know, the things
If you
that
want to do it, you can do it.
Yes.
You just gotta do it the smarter
yes,
way.
yes, precisely. And the thing about it is that when somebody is put in a situation like that, and I am only realizing those things looking back, because you never know while it's happening. You only realize when you look back and connect the dots. But this was all a preparation, some kind, and it became completely obvious to me what this was preparing me for when I about, I would say, 3-4 years within my practice, so I would say around 2008, I had already realized the burnout that happens when you are a lawyer in New York City, because this is the most adversarial environment. You basically argue for a living. That's what you do. So
Never thought of that, but yes, you're right.
So you argue for a living, and as you argue for a living, you develop a certain way of thinking. Your brain is not like anybody else's brain. It's just shaped, molded, and trained to argue. I realized for myself that I can argue for a particular cause, and then I can argue back with myself, and I can argue again. So I have this flexibility of the mind to argue anything at any time with complete confidence, because my way of logical thinking is such that it will always find the way to make an argument successful, to an extent, not completely. But so when you let your mind on its own, it can really turn into it's like a little bit like a nuclear power, depends on the usage. If you use this mind to argue in court for a cause, it's a great thing. But if you let it run your inner world, it can really kill you, because then you can argue from any perspective, and one negativity can lead to another and can really, really be very self-destructive. So I realized that I need to really redesign entirely my life, literally. And then I applied this principle, I think it's called Pareto principle of 80-20. I don't know if you've heard about it.
80-20 rule.
The rule.
That's how I know it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's a principle of economics where it says that 20%. It starts with your wardrobe, like your closet. 20% of the clothes you wear 80% of the time.
Okay.
So you pretty much don't need the 80% of the clothes. And it's the same in a business sense. It's the same thing. 20% of my clients bring 80% of my income. Okay. So what I did was I got rid of the 80% of the clients who bring only 20% of the income.
Oh, okay. I see.
You see?
Okay.
So with that was a big...
You only kept the 20% that bring 80% of the income.
Exactly.
Okay.
So those were the people of extraordinary ability. Those were people who would be artists, entertainers, musicians, designers. So they get a specific type of visa, work visa, which is called O1 visa, and a specific type of green card, which is green cards for people of extraordinary ability. And those, logistically, are easier to push through, but are very hard to make sure that people qualify for them.
Okay.
So with that, I reduced my practice to literally a very few, the la creme de la creme, pretty much, who would come to America, want to come to America to bring their ideas, talent, innovative knowledge, and capacity. So I thought to myself, if I cannot possibly help everybody, but I can help the leaders of the tribes, and they can bring their own people after that. So this is pretty much what the thinking was. And I reduced my practice, and that was a big transition because nothing was guaranteed. Nothing was guaranteed. All I had was just word of mouth and good karma and people who'd just say Bistra is the best. That was pretty much it. That was all the reference that I would get.
Yes.
Yeah. So with that strategy, though, I kind of gained so much power to in the shape of time to myself, to see what other interests I have. So I developed this love for surfing and for traveling. So I started traveling to Costa Rica a lot and surfing and using all these trips to meditate, to explore, to soul search, and to further develop my yogic practice, which to me was, I was born to a yogi father, so it wasn't anything that was new or needed some kind of education. I was just doing it. And then gradually I realized that I need to start teaching people because I see that people need it. Yes. It's my inner calling. It's the calling of my soul to share that knowledge that was bestowed upon me because I didn't really do much. I cannot get credit for any of that.
Well, yes, I've never liked yoga. I always thought it's so slow. I'm with a dancer's background, so I liked more fast movement. But I had some anxieties 2 years ago, and I started practicing yoga every morning. Now I can't live without it.
Yeah.
It just changed my life, literally.
It has to do so much with a very simple realization of what happiness is, because we all want to be happy, after all. That's the goal. That's the ultimate goal. Tibetan Buddhism teaches us that we came to this earth to be happy, and I don't see why that wouldn't be the rule, because there is no other explanation and reason for us to come to this world if it wasn't for us to be happy. So what is happiness? For everybody it's a different thing, but when you think of it from a perspective of a yogi, it is the inner peace and the clarity of the mind.
Well, isn't that contentment? Because they say happiness, just like the anger, is a high state. You cannot sustain it, but the contentment, you can sustain it.
Right, but it's all a matter of semantics in the case. To me, happiness is inner peace and clarity of the mind. So if I'm at inner peace without usage of drugs or any medication and whatever, and my mind is completely clear, I'm then in the moment. And that is a happiness. And when you realize that, you then realize that you are perfect the way you are. If you can maintain that state of peacefulness, then everything starts coming your way, and you go into something that is described in the holistic literature as the flow. You get into your own flow, and my flow is only my flow. Your flow is your flow.
Well, now let's go back a little bit. The transition. I'm really interested in knowing. Okay, you work for several years in a job, but you really feel passionate about something else, and you want to transition to that. What advice would you give? I know you said the 20-80 rule and maybe slowly transition, but is there another way to do it? And how you should find that passion and follow it?
In terms of spirituality, I think that it's the most important thing that one has to develop. It's the spiritual hygiene. And self-realization, realizing who you are, because we're all different. And yoga is about self-realization. You can call yoga any activity, any physical activity that combines breathing exercises and some physical exercises, so long as they lead to training of the mind. And the training of the mind happens through meditation. All that physical activity that we do before the meditation is a preparation for meditation. In traditional yoga, in old times. The yogis, you can see them sitting at the stoops of India and just meditating, and they do it different ways. So you inhale through the left nostril, exhale through the right, and you see them doing these things for hours. But what they do is they get their mind into a state of trance.
Okay.
And when you get your mind into a state of trance, then the creativity kicks in. And then in meditation, in meditative state, you really find who you are, because that's the way to go inside of yourself. So once we start meditating, we get ourselves in resonance and in tune with the universal sound of Om.
Those are some great advices. Now, before we end,
Yeah.
I want to ask you to complete the statement referring to yourself. She is
A yogi.
great. Thank you, Bistra. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank
It
you.
was such a pleasure.
My pleasure. And I'm glad that we reconnected.
Yes.
I think we should do this.
Okay. Thanks for watching. You're watching She Is. I'm Lucia Dragos. See you next time on Woman to Woman TV.